Your gut instinct is fed by your subconscious mind, which is literally a supercomputer. Conscious mind processes roughly 40 bits of information per second. Subconscious mind, 20 million.
Former FBI hostage and crisis negotiator.
Best-selling book called Never Split the Difference.
A lead crisis negotiator and a member of the Joint Terrorist Task Force.
You don't know him, you probably should. Mr. Chris Voss.
It's phenomenal to use words to deactivate potentially ridiculously violent situations. The rush from that is amazing, but it takes work.
Getting caught lying, you've basically fucked it.
You're done. It's inevitable and you're done. It's putting a guaranteed termination to every relationship.
What stood out to me was those patterns.
Yes.
Those mistakes that people kept making, or struggles which they kept having when it came to either executing an exercise or just sticking to something consistently.
Is their heart in the wrong place, or are they just naive? Either one is going to be a waste of your time. The question that is really revealing that I love asking somebody, I might say to you,
what's up, guys, and welcome back to First Things First. We have Chris Voss in the building. Thank you for coming down.
My pleasure. Happy to be here.
You'll never guess what I watched yesterday.
Gladiator.
No.
My masterclass?
No.
Oh, how many?
This is your last one.
Last try. The Playboy Channel.
No. On Valentine's Day.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe.
Oh, your documentary.
Oh, all right, very good. All right, you and my mom. So excellent, thank you.
Yeah, it was actually difficult trying to watch it because it's not available in this region. But I had to hop on a VPN. But it was good.
Oh, very good.
Yeah.
Excellent, cool. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
When did it come out?
It's been. It may be. It came out on Amazon. We finished it about 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, probably. It came out on Amazon about a year ago.
Okay.
We had it in the can. We held it back for a while because there are a lot of people that we wanted to give a chance to see it when nobody else could see it.
Mm-hmm.
So we didn't make it commercially available on Amazon for almost a year.
Yeah. Tactical empathy for people who don't know what we're talking about.
Yes. A friend of mine, Nick Nanton, runs DNA Films. Nick has 22 Emmys. Said, let's do a documentary and about some of the cases that I worked and what I learned from them, some of the more interesting stuff. And yeah, Nick's a great guy. Everything you do with him is fun.
Mm-hmm.
And of all things, if I may, in conjunction with Nick, we're launching a bourbon next month. Because he likes to do fun stuff and he gets stuff done. And everything he's touched that I've done with him has gotten done. He gets it funded. He gets it organized. He executes every single time.
Mm-hmm.
So when he said to me, you want to do a bourbon? I'm like, all right, let's go for it. So it's called The Difference.
Nice.
Never split, always share.
Nice.
And it's going to be available by subscription only.
Mm-hmm.
It won't be available via retail outlets. And we'll see what happens.
Nice. You're a bourbon man, I take it.
Drink an occasional bourbon, usually celebratory, and that's the purpose for it. It's designed to celebrate business success.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not drinking all the time, but when you did something, we're celebrating.
Yeah. Well, it was a great documentary. I think because I've obviously read your stuff, listened to a few podcasts, it was good to actually see visually some of the stuff which you get up to. I think that was the first time I saw your son as well.
Oh, yeah.
He's a beast.
Yeah.
He's a big guy.
Yes, he is. We resemble each other physically in no way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
And over the phone, we sound exactly alike.
Yeah.
Which it has been kind of funny. He'll call a restaurant. If I'd be driving, be on our way to a restaurant, he'll call and say he's me and he'll put in an order and we'll show up. And they thought they talked to him.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Smart dude, too. Very smart guy.
How old is he now?
He's now 39.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He looks like he knows what he's doing. I mean, even when he was doing the role play stuff, I was like, yeah, he's good.
He learned it before I realized that he was even paying attention to it. And so he got his 10,000 hours in probably by age 10.
Negotiating with you.
Yeah. Well, then I found out how I really found out about it was, tactical empathy is great for deactivating negativity. And so if you're a teenager or in your 20s, deactivating negativity is getting you out of trouble. So he was using it to get himself out of trouble for a long time before I realized how he was getting out of trouble.
One thing which was quite interesting to see was how you mentioned a lot of people wanted to be in the position of being a hostage negotiator. Why was that such a popular thing back then?
Well, it sounds cool. It sounds cool. And it sounds easy. Anything that involves verbal communication that people are good at looks easy. And then, I suppose it's probably like being a rapper. Everybody thinks they could be a rapper until they actually try it, and it's hard as hell. It actually requires a lot of work and a certain amount, maybe, of innate ability, somewhere along the lines. But, it sounds cool. It sounds sexy, and a lot of people want to try it because they think, they could do it, and it wouldn't be that hard. And then it turns out to be, it is cool.
Mm-hmm.
And it's phenomenal to use words to deactivate potentially ridiculously violent situation. I mean, that's cool. The rush from that is amazing. But it takes work. And then if you're lucky enough to be bit by it early on and realize how powerful empathy is at deactivating problems and changing people's mindset invisibly, then you're like, hey, this is cool. I really like this. And I got bit early on because I was told to volunteer on a suicide hotline to get into it. And I'm like, okay, that's what I got to do. All right, I'll do it because I got to do that. But then when I was doing it, I was like, this is insanely powerful. I mean, it's ridiculously powerful. So I got bit early on, which was then I continued to pursue it. And it's been a ball. Like on my team, we've got 8 people that coach and train negotiations in a Black Swan group. And we breathe this stuff. We talk about it all the time. We have the best time with it. So yeah, it's a lot of fun when you wrap your mind around it.
Yeah. I mean, to begin with, when you were doing the hotline, you're communicating with these people just on the phone.
Right.
I would imagine that's a lot harder than having that communication in person with somebody.
It's a matter of how you get into it. Like, if you start out learning it on the phone, then not being in person is no big deal because you train and you dial into it and you begin to learn to listen between the lines, like how much information there is in how somebody said something, or the way they hesitate, or particular word choice. For example, one of the real problems on any crisis hotline, any hotline that helps people, is a phenomenon called frequent callers. And they're the people that just call just to suck the life out of you, just to abuse you. The energy vampires.
I know a few of them.
And they're everywhere, right?
Yeah.
And so they call the hotlines, the helplines, because the person on the other end of the phone is supposed to talk to you. So a guy calls me on the phone one time, and he says, "Can I talk to you about something?" Now, talking to you is code for I talk, you shut up, you listen, you don't say a word for an extended period of time. I'm going to suck the life out of you as much as I possibly can. So he says, "Can I talk to you about something?" And I hesitate for a moment and I say, "Well, I'll talk with you." And it completely changes everything. Because if the agreement is, if we're not going to go back and forth, if we're not going to have a conversation with each other, then there's no point. Because you're going to hammer me until I can't take it anymore.
Yeah.
So you learn the subtle little things like that. And then it becomes a lot of fun.
And most of the time when you're having these calls, each one was usually a success.
Yes, and?
No.
Well, nothing that works all the time. I never had anybody kill themselves on the line. I had a guy threaten to do it while I was on the line, and I realized that in the moment, his vision was to kill himself while the volunteer was on the line with him. That's something that my Israeli brothers and sisters in negotiation discovered a long time ago, and they call it the killing journey. And if somebody's actually going to commit an act of violence, they envision how it's going to go step by step all along the way. And a killing journey has a destination. They've imagined how it's going to end. And so your job then is to disrupt the journey along the way. Take the ending away from them, which is why, you catch a suicide bomber on the way to the location. If they get to the location, the chances they're going to blow themselves up is very high.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a verbal interdiction while they're on the way, the chances of them not killing themselves is much higher because it's disrupted the killing journey. So the one time I had somebody who was actually suicidal on the phone, it became clear to me that his goal was to die while I was on the phone. So I only had one move, and I was to hang up the phone. And he actually called back a couple of times, and he literally says to me, and he said it more than once, I want to die while I'm on the phone with you. And I hung up, he called back, we're talking again, and I kept saying, like, look, if you talk with me, I'll stay on the line. And that was back when there was call holding, somebody calling, you hear this click, 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 and the person says, hey, wait a second, I'm going to pick up the other line, keep you on the line. And while I was on the line with him, he says, hold on. I called a bunch of other people and they're all calling me right now. So he put me on hold, which meant he wasn't going to stay on the line with me. And so finally, after the third time that he kept putting me on hold and kept calling back with the same vision, I believed him. Mm-hmm. He said it more than once with enough specificity that I knew that was his journey. And I only had one move. I don't know what happened, but I knew that my best chance of success, which is getting to the original point, nothing works all the time. What's your best chance of success? What works more than anything else? And you find what works more than anything else, knowing that sometimes it won't work.
Yeah. It's pretty intense. How long was this into doing the hotlines?
It was
this particular example.
That call was, I'd probably been on the line for about 2 years at that point in time. In between, what I learned about my training and doing it was also to stay sharp, you got to train besides just do it. Like in communication, Jim Camp once referred to it, negotiation as a human performance event. So the comparable is sports. And Tiger Woods, he won all those tournaments because he constantly practiced. Playing in the tournament wasn't enough to keep him good. Playing in the games is not enough to keep anybody as sharp as they could possibly be. They actually spend more time practicing and honing their skills than actually executing them in a live event. And I learned on the hotline that if I also didn't study besides do all my shifts on the line, then my skills would deteriorate. And I learned that in the second year because at the end of the first year, I hadn't practiced at all during the year. And I came up for my annual review, and my reviewer pointed out to me how significantly my skills had deteriorated because I hadn't practiced for a year. I trained, I went through the training, and I did a year of doing it.
But not the extra practice.
But not making sure that my skills didn't deteriorate. My first annual review, this guy very nicely really slammed me for doing a horrible job. Mm-hmm. And so then I've always worked at skills maintenance ever since.
Mm-hmm. And then after the second year, is that when you went on to doing the next sort of phase of your career?
Yeah, I stayed on the hotline. After I'd been on the air for about 2 years was when I went through the FBI training. And at that point in time, there was a heavy-duty emphasis on teaching it because teaching it is a great way to stay sharp. You got to spend a lot of time explaining it. And it's a separate skill. Teaching it versus doing it are two different skills. It's one of the reasons why most of the great players are never great coaches. And the greatest coaches, for example, a couple of the best coaches in the NBA ever, Phil Jackson and Steve Kerr.
Yeah.
They were six men. They didn't start. Steve Kerr played on several championship teams. He didn't start. Phil Jackson played on championship New York Knicks. He didn't start. So that they were close to the best. But if they didn't start on their teams, they weren't even the best player on their team. But because they studied it and they had to work that much extra harder on trying to figure things out. Those are the guys that become often the best coaches. And then they start coaching and they help take players to the next level.
I noticed that in fitness. Some of the guys who really struggle to get a good physique, not because of lack of trying, but just because genetically it's not working in their favor.
Yeah.
So they have to really dig deep into the science
Yeah.
to make their training as optimal as possible so that they can get the best results which they can achieve. And they usually don't tend to have like the biggest following on social media based on the way that they look. But in terms of what they understand and the science behind it, they end up being some of the best coaches and providing the best information.
Yeah.
Usually the most jacked people are genetically gifted, and they could go to the gym and just pick up a dumbbell and they get absolutely massive. But they tend to be pretty terrible at teaching it, or actually, if somebody asks them a question like, how do you do this? Like, what is your approach? Half the time, they don't really know what they're doing. They're just very lucky with the genetics they were given.
Yeah, and then they eat ice cream and pizza.
Yeah, exactly. I think I was a bit like that, to be honest, when I started. But then I realized, if I wanted to have some degree of success with being a coach and doing the social media thing, like I've got to do my research.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you learn a lot as well from coaching people. I think a lot of my experience had come from coaching other people, doing the one-to-one stuff for years. Like all day, every day, I used to coach people.
Yeah.
And what stood out to me was just those patterns.
Yes.
Those mistakes that people kept making, or struggles which they kept having when it came to either executing an exercise or just sticking to something consistently.
Right. Yeah.
There was something that the motivation would come, they would put in the solid work for a couple of weeks and they'd just stop. And I'm like, why do you keep stopping? Like, you can't build a great physique if you just go through these extended periods of time without lifting any weight. So it was more like a psychological thing.
Did you find that when they stopped coaching or when they stopped working, was there a pattern of a predictable timetable when it wouldn't happen? For example, a guy that I was recently did a keynote for his company, real estate coaching. He says, they got a 100-day program, but they find that at about 21 or 22 days, that's when they're going to get tired out and they'll stop.
Yeah.
So they'll always schedule an additional contact from a coach or a salesperson at about 21 days, 22 days, just to check in to see because that was predictably when they would get fatigued and let go.
Yeah. Usually a month.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
And it's you see this in January. Usually throughout the whole month of January, everybody's on it.
Right.
Sticking to their training, doing the extra cardio, nutrition. And then when January comes to an end, everybody just kind of seems to stop.
Right.
Even with myself, I can never go on an extended cutting phase because after a couple of weeks of being really strict and restricting myself with calories, I'm like, nah, I don't want to do this anymore.
You get tired, you get burned out a little.
Yeah, if you're constantly restricting calories for too long a period of time, your strength will go down, you start to lose muscle, quality of life goes down, everything just eventually gets less pleasant and it gets much harder for you to stick to.
Right.
So whenever I see these people who say they're going to do a cut for like 12 weeks or 16 weeks, I mean, yeah, good luck being super strict with everything for 16 weeks. Like you don't have the discipline to be able to stick to that.
Yeah.
So I say, let's just go through little, smaller phases of doing it.
Right.
And the success will be higher.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Yeah. I mean, I'm always looking for insights like that. So I appreciate that. Yeah. You're teaching me.
I was curious to know when I was watching the documentary, obviously you were all of a sudden working in places like Colombia and the Philippines.
Right. How
did that jump happen? Because like, why would somebody in Colombia or the Philippines request help from somebody who's based in the US?
Well, so two separate questions.
Yeah.
Like, how did the break happen? And then why do they ask for help? So some of the best things in my life has happened as a result of something really negative. Like the main reason that I became a hostage negotiator, because I had recurring knee injury, and I had my knee put back together a couple times. Originally, I wanted to be on a SWAT team. I was on a list to become a member of the SWAT team when I was with Kansas City Police Department, and I got offered with the FBI literally 2 weeks before I would have gone to the SWAT team with the PD. And if they'd have come sooner, if there'd have been a 2 week time change. I would never have left the police department. So it was in the FBI Pittsburgh. I got on the SWAT team in the Pittsburgh division. And then I got transferred to New York. I tried out for the FBI's hostage rescue team, which is equivalent of, it's a tier 1 asset, Navy SEALs. A lot of former Navy SEALs and Delta guys on the FBI's hostage negotiation team. Tried out, ended up sustaining another knee injury, another knee surgery. And so became a hostage negotiator as a result, because you can only have your knee serious surgical intervention so many times.
Yeah.
So then I'm in New York and changing management and terrorism, and the top terrorism guy in New York didn't like me. I was very entrepreneurial, and he didn't like entrepreneurial people. He wanted to know everything that would happen before it happened and wanted to approve it. Real control guy. Didn't like being caught off guard. He's in charge. He's entitled to run the opera. He's put in charge. He's entitled to run things the way he wants. I'm not his guy. I'm an entrepreneurial guy. So I decided, I took the promotion. I was being recruited for the FBI's full-time hostage negotiators, crisis negotiation unit. So I go from being a hostage negotiation as an additional duty to full-time. So now I'm doing it full-time, and kidnapping is a business, and it ebbs and flows depending upon the country that has it. And just as I was working there, most of the business was in Latin America, principally Colombia. And the ebbs and flows of the political dynamics, the kidnapping had been going on for a long time, until what it does is it destroys human capital. And, kidnapping is a business. You're going to take a product, if you will, that's the easiest to acquire with a maximum return on investment. So what it does is people who have money, but not enough money to protect themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so it drains the middle class and the upper middle class. And then as the professional class goes away, then ultimately you've only got, it's fished out. There's only really rich people who can afford really dangerous bodyguards to protect their resources, or they have poor people that have no money, and there's no sense in kidnapping them because they don't have any money.
Yeah.
So Colombia was pretty much fished out, if you will, but kidnapping was picking up in the Philippines simultaneously. So I worked a couple of cases in Colombia, some Latin America stuff, and then the Philippines started to take off, and I had a series of kidnappings I worked in the Philippines. And what gives the FBI jurisdiction is it's an American citizen has been kidnapped, and there's a demand, or there's a political demand on the U.S. government. Either way, if it's a kidnapping and there's a demand of ransom for an American citizen, or there's a demand against the U.S. government, the FBI is involved.
Okay.
And so I started doing that stuff, and it was a run. There was a lot of stuff going on in the Philippines for several years.
Where is bad now for kidnappings?
Well, Northern Africa is still a tremendously lucrative fundraising for Al-Qaeda-related kidnapping. Or Al-Qaeda offshoots. Al-Qaeda originally got in the kidnap business for political demands, mostly in Iraq.
Are they kidnapping young people to brainwash them?
No, not in that particular instance. They're doing it for money. They started originally for political demands. I talk about it in the documentary. A lot of true believers in their cause start kidnapping people for political demands, to force governments to do things. And so many governments, not the U.S. government, but many governments, to try to save their citizens, starts throwing boatloads of money to try to keep them from killing people. Western European governments are famous for $2, $3, $4, $5 million ransoms, huge ransoms. Japanese do that a lot too. Throw money at the problem. And suddenly, the bad guys are like, oh, this is lucrative.
Yeah, good business.
We can, never mind the cause. I got money now.
Mm-hmm.
I could buy things. And the zealots become businessmen very quickly. And so that happened in the Philippines. I made a lot of money. And then Al-Qaeda, they started in Iraq chopping heads, and to try to save people, they're throwing boatloads of money on it. And then Al-Qaeda learned globally, this is a great business.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a matter of what sort of infrastructure comes back at them. And in Iraq, we had American Special Forces coalition militaries. Ultimately you mobilize a fairly dangerous military response to put them out of business. That sort of law enforcement military infrastructure doesn't really exist in Africa, by and large. So it's still very lucrative to kidnap people in northern sub-Saharan Africa, and they're still making a lot of money there doing that.
When you were working these cases overseas, I assume part of you was kind of enjoying it whilst probably being very stressed out at the same time.
Well, it's a privilege. I mean, if you call doing something a privilege enjoyment, and I'm not sure that's exactly the right word, but you get into something that matters. You feel like it matters.
You got a purpose.
You have a purpose. You're doing good both for the kidnapped victims' family, and ideally for the government simultaneously. And then, it's a privilege. It burns you out.
Yeah.
It's 24/7. Basically, I had that job for 7 years, and I didn't have any days off. And it was a privilege. And when I left, I became retirement eligible, and I decided it was, for a variety of reasons, time to move on. I didn't think I was burned out. But then when I got out, I found out I was. And I needed to decompress a little bit.
Yeah.
So the universe took care of me. I moved on at the right time.
Is there a part of you that misses it, or are you glad you're out of that?
No, I don't, because, then adapting all that to business has been this great journey. I mean, I love innovative stuff. The opportunity to plow new ground, there's tremendous freedom there. If you're really heading into a new area, then the number of people that tell you you're wrong, it's hard for them to say it's wrong because they haven't done it. Nobody's done it successfully. So plowing new ground, pushing into a new area, and actually being successful is a great journey. And adapting this to business negotiation has been fantastic. I mean, globally, there's over 5 million copies of the book sold, and it's global. And so to me, what that means is the number of people worldwide that really want to collaborate. This negotiation strategy, tactical empathy, is about making great deals with people. True entrepreneurs, the innovators, who don't want to win at somebody else's expense. They want to win, but they don't need to beat somebody. They just want to do really well. And they like doing well with people. And the book has sold so well globally. To me, that says that there's this great population of entrepreneurs worldwide who really want to succeed with people. And that's been a lot of fun.
Do you ever fear that the wrong type of people are learning some of your methods to use against people like you?
Yeah, of course, but there's such a minority, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And then when you get good at the skills, you can sniff out somebody's trying to manipulate you very early on. And that's part of getting good at it, is just realizing, smelling the bad actor early.
Well, so you can kind of, when they know something that you're trying to do.
So, all right, say that again.
So I said that very wrong. So it's like they can anticipate what you're trying to do so that you are the one that comes out on top.
Well, so interesting question, because it's a complicated question. You should anticipate. There should be some anticipation. Proactive is anticipation. And it's not really active listening, it's proactive listening. And then you're looking for patterns. You talked about patterns before. What are the patterns of somebody that wants to collaborate with you? What are the patterns of the person who's trying to exploit you, taking advantage of you? You're looking for the patterns and a recognition early on. And then getting back to an original idea, best chance of success, you smell who you're never going to make a deal with. It's not a sin to not get the deal. It's a sin to take a long time to not get the deal. People you're never going to get the deal with, they got patterns. And if you're looking for the patterns, they tend to show up really early. My former boss, Gary Nessner, ran a crisis negotiation unit, one of my mentors. They begin to realize in hostage negotiation, there's something called suicide by cop. You're never going to make the deal with them. They're there to kill people. And so Gary developed a series of things called high-risk indicators that show up right away. So you can smell the pattern that you're never going to get them out. They're never going to come out. You got to pick an alternative approach. So I remember realizing that. And then we started to realize, we're never going to make any deal. Human behavior has patterns. If there's high-risk indicators in hostage negotiation, then there's high-risk indicators in business negotiation.
Mm-hmm.
What are they? Can you pick them out early on? Do they show up in the first half hour? Same as in a hostage negotiation. They'll show up right away if you're willing to see it. And so we've actually adapted that idea, and we put a lot of effort into a business deal. Pick out the guy that's never going to make the deal with you.
Yeah.
And walk away.
Did you ever work cases where there was a bank robbery and there was hostages involved?
Yes.
Because I watched, probably for the fourth time, the film Inside Man.
Oh,
with Denzel.
Yeah.
And
Denzel and Spike Lee movie.
Yeah.
Great
I
film.
watched that and I just keep thinking, you're Denzel. Like, is that an accurate is that film an accurate representation of how something like that would go down?
There's a lot
of tactics he used.
There's a lot of really good stuff in that film. I mean, it's a fictionalized version. The whole idea of the story, Spike and writing that and developing it. He had a number of, other things. There's some criticism of, who are the people that did bad things during World War II and how they spend the rest of their life trying to make up for it. That's one of the underlying themes. But between, Denzel Washington, first of all, he so immerses himself in roles. He's always going to add stuff off the top of his head that the director goes like, holy cow, that was beautiful. Yeah. And he'll say, did you get that? Because it was really good and I can't do it again.
Yeah.
And so, there were those moments in that film, Inside Man.
Mm-hmm.
But they captured the grittiness of NYPD hostage negotiators with that really well.
Mm-hmm.
And the realism of it in the character. So a lot of the writing was great. I love the movie because they've got their story, which is a little surreal, but then the elements of realism in the attitude of the character, the whole approach to it, the realism was great, and it's one of my favorite movies.
Mm-hmm. Is there any other good ones that with the sort of theme of hostages negotiations?
Well, Inside Man's got some great elements. Samuel Jackson, Chicago Cop. Take me a minute to recall. It's an older film. I think John Singleton might have been the director.
Mm-hmm.
But there were elements in that we used to pull clips from that and use them in negotiation training. The Negotiator, Kevin Spacey's Samuel Jackson. And I'm not sure, it might have been John Singleton as a director, but the movie The Negotiator has clips that we have used in training in the past. So, those are the two best off the top of my head.
Because you've written books, I reckon you could maybe write a film. I don't know how lucrative that business is now, because I feel like there's not many good films that come out anymore.
Well, the difficulty. I read the book Creativity Inc. about Pixar.
Mm-hmm.
And I never really realized how hard it is for a studio to keep in business until I read that. Because normally you see films, you see the Pixar films, especially, and you're like, yeah, of course. It's easy to do that. And then you realize, why they put out so many sequels that are watered down versions of the original. Because if you're running a studio, you pull together an army to make a film. You're done with the film. You got all these employees. What the hell are you going to have them do? Do you lay them all off? How do you continue to pay your employees because they've knocked themselves out? You put together an army. Any Pixar film took years to produce. You got all these people gainfully fully employed to produce the film. Ideally, it makes money. But now to boot up another film is like booting up another company. And if you care about your people at all as a studio, how you continue to pay these people.
Mm-hmm.
I never really thought how hard it is to make a film, to run a studio and stay in business, till I read Creativity Inc. So, coming up with a hit movie, if you see the results, you're like, why don't people do that more?
Yeah.
Until you look at it from the other point of view and realize how hard it actually is.
Yeah, I guess they just want to minimize the risk And at least with a sequel or the third or fourth one, because they can just kind of piggyback off the original film,
Right.
there's going to be some degree of kind of automatic success.
Yeah.
Because everybody who watched the first one is probably going to watch the second one.
Yeah. They could do, I think, Aladdin 2, like straight to video sequel, which is, Aladdin is a great film. Robin Williams, phenomenal. You know, the writers are having trouble keeping up with his improv, just brilliant stuff. And then how do we keep everybody gainfully employed? Well, the studio says, let's do a straight to video sequel. It won't be a blockbuster. If you're a big fan of Aladdin, you'll probably watch it. You won't be in as love with it in the film, and you're disappointed. But on the other hand, for the studio, they kept people gainfully employed in the meantime. So fascinating to see it from the other point of view.
I guess teaching makes more sense for you to go into the business. Like the Black Swan method.
Black Swan.
Can you
sound like special forces guys, right?
What is the sort of the basic sort of principle about that? How does it work?
Well, we took the basics of the hostage negotiation skills, you know, through a couple business schools that I was teaching in, adapted them to see how they would work in real life. And, you know, I did my son Brandon, you know, in the documentary, Brandon was always a sounding board, helping me refine and develop the skills, and make people do it in the business schools that I was teaching in. Georgetown first, Harvard, Georgetown, and then USC. Then Derek on my team was contributing to the ideas, but vast majority of the refinement of the ideas and the application was my son Brandon and I. And so then, you know, we're adapting it, and it's evolved. It's grown significantly. There's stuff that we learn something every few months. There's a new idea. You know, there's a phrase, no man steps in the same river twice. You're not the same man, and the river's not the same. So we're the river of the training, tactical empathy. And there are ideas and insights that between my whole team, because we coach real life stuff constantly. The one thing I never expected that we would do as much, I thought we would just teach people. You know, we have, you know, basic methodology. You know, you go train, I thought corporations mostly. We do a lot of corporate training. Far more entrepreneurs than corporates, two different animals. And then we started coaching because people were saying like, you know, how do I adapt this? I got a big negotiation. Can you coach me? And I thought that would be a side. And now it's a significant aspect of what we do. We coach a lot of people, and we're coaching some real people with a lot of money on the line.
Yeah.
Because, you know, you don't realize the subtlety of it. You know, one very high net worth guy that I just started coaching 6 months ago, by normal business standards, he's really good. But he succeeds because he's such a good person and he's curious. But to some degree, he succeeds despite his negotiation ability, not because of it.
Yeah.
Started coaching him, and he told me a couple of weeks ago, he said, I now realize that beforehand, I was seeing the world in only black and white, and I see it in color now. And so that's cool. And some of the stuff that I talked to him about, he gets our most cutting edge insights. I was explaining some stuff in his team to him a couple weeks ago that we just unearthed because we continue to explore this. We continue to apply ideas. We continue to dive into human nature, and it's endless. You know, from what you're doing, you know, it's endlessly fascinating. Yeah. You're not really doing it any different, but there's an endless discovery within what you're doing, and that's why we're coaching and training, and the river is not the same as it was a year ago.
Yeah. We'll get back to the podcast in a second, but first of all, I want to say a massive shout out to Bionic. I have been using their supplements for the past 4 years. I never knew what supplements I needed to take. I'd always go into the pharmacy and buy a load of random bottles and end up popping pills all day, every day, not having a clue if I was consuming the vitamins which I should be consuming at all. But Bionic came to save the day. They are a tailor-made supplement company that will put together your own specific formula based on your activity, your gender. I have Bionic Pro, where I get the blood test done every 3 to 4 months, and based on that blood test, I get my own personalized formula. For those people who don't want to do a blood test or don't have access to that, then you can go with Bionic Go, where you just have to fill in a short questionnaire, and based on that questionnaire, you will get your tailored supplements with a surprisingly high degree of accuracy. So stop the guesswork, sign up to Bionic, and ensure that you remove those deficiencies and build up your immune system. I would imagine some of the most successful business people have implemented some of the methods which you teach. Do you find that to be the case when I'm sure now you've met a lot of successful business people?
If they can be really successful and not be emotionally intelligent, they can have found the algorithm, for lack of a better term, for their business. And, Mark Cuban says, you place 1,000 bets hoping one hits.
Yeah.
And in many cases, really successful business people have found the algorithm for the thing that they're doing, and they stuck to it, and they're ridiculously effective. So that doesn't mean they're insight into people. They found the algorithm for the business.
Sometimes they're still a bit autistic.
They could be a little autistic, it might not be a bad thing. But then are they really curious? Do they really like people? Are they innovative?
Mm-hmm.
Do they want a new way of doing things that nobody else has done? They're not limited by best practices, because best practices aren't new. There's no pioneering in a best practice. It's what other people are already doing. And they're more fascinated by a new and unusual way to do something.
Mm-hmm.
The true entrepreneur, and those are the people that we coach, because they're just curious. They don't want to know the best practice. They want to invent the best practice.
Yeah.
And they're a lot of fun to work with.
But this is all sort of new territory for me. I've never really dug deep into it. And it's quite interesting because I'm fairly sure that there have been people who have had conversations with me that have been trying to persuade me to do something or to get something out of me. But I've just been unaware. Maybe I've just thought, this person's really charismatic and they're really nice. They're showering me with compliments. Where I think, hang on a second, is he having a genuine conversation with me, or is he trying to get something out of me?
Right.
And I want to be more prepared when I'm dealing with these types of people. Because once you become more successful, you have more status, more people want to sit down and talk to you.
Right.
Usually they want to maybe get something out of you or go into business with you. I'm sure you experience it as well. As your fame has risen, you get way more people who are reaching out, wanting to do business. How do you tell now if somebody's just genuinely wanting to have a nice conversation with you versus somebody who's trying to get something from you?
Well, I listen to my instinct more and more, because if you start listening to your instinct and you're not blinded by either your fear centers or your hopes, you could be blinded by either one. And so sorting out the gut is really hard. So you got to make mistakes along the line, or you start to look for earmarks. Is their heart in the wrong place, or are they just naive? Either one is going to be a waste of your time. It's a little bit easier, both, once you start looking for what the problems are. But you got to make the mistake to find out. You got to get bit a couple times. If you wonder, if your gut says, a lot of times I'll say to myself, my gut says, I don't think this is going to work out, but I don't know, so I'm going to go along because I need the data. And then it starts to jump out at you really quick. Like I can smell somebody trying to exploit me very quickly.
It'd be funny if someone tries that at this stage, knowing who you are.
Know what? Well, I'm also a challenge. For example, a question that is really revealing that I love asking somebody, I might say to you, what do you love about Dubai? And I'll watch to see, I could tell whether or not you're answering me genuinely.
Because of my body language.
Your body language. And if you really lean into that question, you're going to look up, and I could see you accessing genuine love about an environment. And you're going to tell me very quickly what your core values are. And if I'm listening, I'm going to know exactly who you are. In response, it's going to take about 2 minutes. And I'm going to get a real good idea whether or not we resonate on our core values. So I'm discussing that at a conference I'm speaking at, maybe 2 months ago. So I'm sitting around in the VIP room, if you will, where the people that have paid extra to be there coming in. We're doing a meet and greet, signing books, taking pictures. And so this guy who's manipulative wants to see if he can plant an idea in my head that doesn't exist. So he walks up to me. His business is, getting people to have more and more staffing assistants. And he comes up to me and says, "What do you love about having 9 assistants?" And I'm like, what the F are you talking about? I don't have 9 assistants. He says, "Yeah, well, what do you love about having 9 assistants?" I'm like, and then I look at him, I'm like, "You're a jerk. You're asking me a question that's disingenuous because you're trying to get me to think about something that's not true, and you're trying to hustle me. Can you plant an idea of love of something that I've never experienced?" And the second time he asked me that, I was like, all right, you're a cheap hustler. And so I just stopped talking to him.
Yeah.
But, I stopped and thought about it. I gave it an experience, and I'm willing to say, let that be an indicator to me of bad behavior, person in the wrong, whose heart is in the wrong place.
Mm-hmm.
So there's 2 kinds of people that are a problem. People that are trying to manipulate you, and then people are just naive. They just don't know. And they think something's easy. Now, they'll soak up as much or more time as anybody else. They've never done something. And that what they look like is like, I got this great idea. And that's an indicator of a lack of experience in implementation. I get coached on business, and I get coached by Dan Sullivan, a strategic coach. A bunch of he's coaching for high performance entrepreneurs. Like, everybody comes to Dan as an entrepreneur. They're not a legacy CEO. They're not hired gun CEOs. They've all built their companies from nothing, and always looking for the next level. And the camaraderie in the community is worth as much as listening to Dan. And Dan says, anybody walks up to him and says, "I got a great opportunity for you," he turns on his heel and walks away. Because if they're focused on the opportunity, they have no idea what crossing a landscape looks like. Now, their heart could be in the right place. I've heard Dan say that, and lo and behold, on Shark Tank, the sharks say that if an entrepreneur stands up and talks about the size of the market, then they tend not to want to make the deal because it's effectively, "I got a great opportunity for you." They have no idea what it's like to cross a landscape. We need some experience crossing a landscape. Now, their heart could be in the right place, but they're just so naive. They got no idea how hard it is to get across the territory.
Yeah.
So you say, all right, you know what? Go find out what it's like to cross the territory. Then come back and see if it's as easy as you're making it sound to be right now.
Yeah. That's often the case with first-time business people starting a new project. Like, loads of people have this idea of, oh yeah, I want to start a clothing business. And they have no idea, like, what it actually takes to have a successful clothing business.
Right. Everybody forgets how hard Damon John worked to get to where he was going, right?
Yeah. So with gut instinct, I feel like it's one of those things where you kind of don't really have it when you're young. It's something which gets better with time.
Yep.
Because when I remember I've had scenarios in my late teens or early 20s where I haven't really had much of a gut instinct. And if there was a feeling that I was getting from it, I couldn't really rely upon it too much because I just hadn't got much experience from life. So if you notice that there is a pattern of your gut instinct getting better as you get older.
Yes, and here's why. Your gut instinct is fed by your subconscious mind, which is literally a supercomputer.
Mm-hmm.
Your conscious mind, book Biology of Belief, Bruce Lipton might be the author. I always slaughter the author, but the book is Biology of Belief. PhD cell biologist. This is the source of my stat. Conscious mind processes roughly 40 bits of information per second. Subconscious mind, 20 million. 500,000 to 1 ratio. 500,000 to 1. Not 10 times better, not 100 times better, not 1,000 times better. 500,000 times more powerful supercomputer feeds your gut instinct. But that computer needs data.
Mm-hmm.
And to point out the obvious, when you're young, you don't have the data. Now, the hard part is listening to your gut as opposed to your fear centers. Fear centers never go away, and they are constantly trying to override what your gut's telling you. But to your point, when you're young, you don't have that much data to feed the supercomputer.
Mm-hmm.
And the real challenge is after age about 25, separating your gut instinct out from your fear centers. So your gut instinct is, if you listen to it, your gut just gets better every day because you got more data. Even your mistakes are data, which is why if I got a bad feeling about somebody, but there's some, it's a pattern I've never seen before, I'll go through it with them because I need the information.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll know.
Have you had a scenario where you were massively wrong with a gut instinct that you had?
No, I've made mistakes, and I will continue to make mistakes. But I can't say that I've been massively wrong.
Mm-hmm.
There's stuff that I didn't know, patterns I didn't see. I'm still learning. So I'm going to continue to make mistakes. Massively is the adjective that's causing me to hesitate. But ideally, I never stop learning. A friend of mine, and I love giving people credit for where I got the idea. Michael Mulgill runs this great, phenomenal success, which started out as doing video marketing for law firms, and just built this phenomenal business. Big fan of Michael's. And he says, if you're not embarrassed of what you knew a year ago, you haven't learned enough in the last year. No matter how old you are. If you don't think about what you thought about something a year ago, and you don't say to yourself, Jesus, I was stupid a year ago. And you spent the year not learning. You could be a last century guy like me. I'm in my 60s. You could be 15 years old. You could be 25. You could be 35. Doesn't matter. The last year you haven't learned some stuff that makes you feel stupid a year ago, then your brain shut down. You're not learning.
Yeah. For those people that maybe are not very self-aware, they are wrong about their gut instinct, or they're just too young to have a good one. If we're going back to body language, how can you tell if somebody is either lying or just full of shit?
Two separate things again, right? Somebody can be full of shit and have their heart in the right place. They're just super naive. I think it's one of the reasons why you see either 6 seconds or 3 hours. What the hell am I talking about? You want to really learn about somebody, listen to a conversation they had with somebody on a podcast for an extended period of time. Because then you begin to see how, you're looking for the moments where you know that they were being honest. And a friend of mine, former manager of the Dodgers, I can see his face. I'll think of his name in a minute. He used to say, in every 3-hour conversation, there'd be 90 seconds of solid gold. And so you're having a really long conversation because you got comparison data. You can't figure out if somebody's lying in 10, 15 minutes. You need the whole pattern to then compare what's going on and then find out when they look down, are they lying? Or are they looking down to be thoughtful? And start to compare their answers. So, which is why, by and large, I don't teach body language. My company doesn't teach body language. Everybody wants to know what's the tell? What's their tell? What's their poker tell? What are they doing when they trying to make me believe I got a full house when in point of fact I got nothing? It's not there. What you really want to know is what people look like when they're telling the truth, and that takes a little bit longer. But if you talk to somebody and really listen to them in a long conversation and hear them answer the same question from a couple different answers, now you got a feel for when they're being honest, if they're being honest.
Yeah.
A polygraph picks up all your heart rate, your breathing rate, temperature changes, whether or not your eyes dilate at certain points. What a polygraph really does is pick up what you look like when you tell the truth, not when you lie. Which means then, if you have a pattern of telling the truth, then anytime you deviate from that pattern, you're deceiving somebody. The original issue is, do you tell the truth at all? then you see when somebody comes out of it. But if you never tell the truth,
Yeah.
then you
So
never
you
have a
could
pattern interrupt.
technically outsmart a polygraph if you were just constantly lying.
Well, then a good polygrapher will say you're deceiving all the time.
Mhm.
So I can't tell when you're telling the truth because you're always deceptive. And a good polygrapher will tell you that. They'll not say he's lying or not lying, saying you're deceiving the entire time.
Have you come across people who've been able to outsmart them, these machines?
If you got a good polygrapher, you know what the problem is. If you got some polygraph guy that wants to sit you down and ask 5 questions, that's not enough information.
Mm.
But if you got a good polygrapher, then actually they don't have to put you on a polygraph because they can figure it out before they put you on a polygraph, and then polygraph just backs up what their observations told them in the first place.
Yeah, I'm usually very bad at lying most of the time, especially when I'm in a relationship and I've been in a relationship for a while. They obviously get to know me and my behavior. And if they ask me a question and I say something and I just like can't stop laughing, or I get like, I start to get hot and agitated, like I'm just giving myself away.
Yeah.
I can't lie to people who know me.
Yeah, exactly. Which first of all, which is great because that means that you're an honest person. And so you're out of character if you deceive it.
Mm-hmm.
Relatively, temptation to lie came up with me yesterday. Yesterday's Valentine's Day. I'm here in Dubai with my girlfriend, Wendy, and I haven't had a chance to get any Valentine's Day anything yet for a variety of reasons. So we're sitting in a hotel room, door knocks, open up the door, is this great Valentine candy thing. And I'm standing there holding it, and she looks at me, she goes, "Oh, baby, oh my God. Oh, that's so beautiful. That's so wonderful." And she did, thank you. And she could tell from the horrified look on my face that I'm like, if I can't take credit for this, and then the person who actually sends it to me calls and she answers the phone, I'm in a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
So I stared at this damn thing for about way too long. And she says, "You didn't give it to me, did you?" I'm like, "No, I thought about taking credit." She said, "I can tell you waited way too long to take credit for this." So I was tempted to lie, but I didn't go for it. Thought about it.
Would you say it's always best to tell the truth?
Yeah.
Isn't there ever a situation where
It's the best long-term strategy.
Yeah.
You want the long-term strategies of success. Listen to Jordan Peterson talk about the truth the other day, and he's just like, look, it's a long-term strategy. Telling the truth is the best long-term strategy. You lie, it's exhausting, and they're going to find out. So what'd you do? You wasted a lot of time trying to cover something up. The other side's ultimately going to find out. Tell the truth. It saves time, and the other side has no reason to doubt you because you tell the truth.
Getting caught lying, you've basically fucked it.
You're done.
Yeah.
It's inevitable and you're done. It's putting a guaranteed termination to every relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And so it don't matter how long. Ultimately, they're going to find out. And then you're done. So you could be a total sociopath. If you're a complete sociopath, you want what's only best for you long term. You're going to tell the truth.
Yeah. Is there never a situation where you might need to lie?
I don't think so.
No.
And I've gotten that question a whole bunch of times, especially before the book came out. I'm at this conference on negotiation at Harvard, got all these academics, and we're giving our 2 cents worth on negotiations. One of the academics on Harvard says, in front of everybody, big crowd, "So you're telling me that if there's a terrorist that had a nuclear bomb in Boston, and you knew that if you lied to him, they wouldn't set off the bomb, you wouldn't lie to him. You knew that by lying to him, it would stop him." I'm like, "No, I wouldn't lie." They go, "How could that be?" I said, "Well, first of all, they're a better liar than I am. So they're going to know I'm lying because they're better at it than I am. They're going to smell it. Secondly, they're probably trying to see if I'll lie.
Yeah.
And if I live up to the expectation of being a liar, that's going to trigger them to set off the bomb." And the academic guy goes, "Oh, I guess you're right.
Yeah.
And so my life experience has been that the best strategy, the truth is the best long-term strategy.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so if you are supposed to tell the truth and you're in a situation where telling the truth is going to hurt that other person or will be difficult for them to digest, how do you set things up to almost kind of prepare them?
Right.
And I don't know, just make it as easy as possible, because loads of people don't like to have hard conversations.
Right.
I know I'm generally like a conflict-free person.
Right.
I like to avoid as much as possible
Right.
uncomfortable situations.
Right.
I don't chase them. But obviously with life, relationships, business, whether it be ending a relationship or firing a member of staff,
Yep.
you could have a pretty difficult conversation.
Right. Yeah, which is why most people lie. They don't lie because they're malicious. Most people, white lies, trying to save your feelings. So motivation for lying is not bad. But simultaneously, everybody loves a straight shooter. What's a straight shooter? Straight shooter, somebody tells you the truth, but it's not getting smacked in the face with a brick the way they tell you. They do it in an emotionally intelligent way, which is one of the things we teach in my company. Because you got to deliver bad news and you want to maintain or enhance a relationship. You want to know that I'm going to tell you the bad news. I'm not going to hide it from you. So how do you do that? Effectively, it's you warn people it's coming. The emotional pain centers in the brain are pretty much the same as the physical pain centers. Imagine going to a doctor. Doctor's going to give you a shot. And he just jabs you in the arm with a needle. I'm like, Jesus, why the hell didn't you tell me that something was coming?
Mm-hmm.
So you got a reason for being mad that the pain wasn't coming. Same circumstances. Doctor says, this ain't going to hurt at all. Hit you with the needle. Now you're angry because he lied to you. Try to make you feel good before it happened. Catch you off guard.
Mm-hmm.
Heart's in the right place, doing it the wrong way. Sit down with the same doctor and go, this is going to hurt. He hits you with the needle. Your reaction is one of two things. It wasn't that bad. Well, thanks for warning me.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with emotional pain. We teach people to say, I got bad news, and then deliver the news. And I kind of learned that the hard way. The worst professional moment of my career, which is not the worst moment of my life, was when Martin Burnham got killed in the Philippines. Had worked the case for over 13 months, thought we were going to get everybody out alive. It was a train wreck, beginning to end. It's one of the things in the documentary.
Yeah. This is when they just walked away.
No, that was a prior case, the Schilling case.
Okay.
On the heels of that was the Burnham case. And the bad guys lost big on the Schilling case because they got nothing. So they're coming back in and trying to make a big score, make a lot of money. And very much like a championship team. What happens after a championship team in any sport? After the championship, all the individual players are like, I didn't get enough credit. I should get paid more. Championship teams fall apart because people feel undervalued at the championship instead of glorifying in it, which is why it's so hard to repeat in sports. We win a championship with a Schilling case. Bad guys don't get anything. The governments cooperate. Philippine government cooperates with the U.S. government. All the competing entities, highly cooperative in the Schilling case. We get into the next case. Nobody wants to collaborate. We have a top negotiator, phenomenal superstar in the first case, who informed me what was going on before he informed the Philippine government. They thought that was a violation of the chain of command. Second case comes around. Not only did they take the other guy out who was a superstar, put a different guy in, the second guy they put in is a drunk. He's drinking all the time. But the one thing the Philippine government can count on is he's going to tell them what's going on before he tells me, which means I'm hearing about all these conversations after the fact, like hours after the fact. But they didn't like the way the championship was won the first time around. So over the course over that 13 months, 2 out of 3 Americans got murdered and a bunch of Filipinos got killed. It ended up with a botched rescue attempt. 13 months in, I get a call back in the U.S., 5 o'clock in the morning. Negotiator calls me on the phone, says, I got bad news. Martin's dead. He didn't call me on the phone and say, Martin's dead. He said, I got bad news. Hesitated. You brace yourself for the bad news, and you imagine the worst, and it either equals the worst or it's not as bad as you imagine. At this point in time, it happened to equal the worst. But I experienced it in the moment. I remember how much I appreciated. He gave me a brief warning, brace yourself, and then he hit me with it, pretty much with that exact timing. And I found that to be the way to always deliver bad news under any circumstances, because your biggest problem is your biggest problem, which means whatever the bad news is, even if you happen to be living a luxurious life, might feel like the end of the world because it's a comparative thing. And across the board, we learned, like if we're doing business and I got bad news for you, as soon as I know, I'm going to call you because you could be angry for me for hiding it from you. You want me to tell you, and you want me to tell you in an emotionally intelligent way.
Yeah.
Real estate agent, you made an offer on a house. Buyer rejects it. You should call your buyer on the phone and say, I got bad news. They rejected the offer. Just like that. Buyer's going to love it. Like, thank God you told me. Thank God you gave me a chance to prep myself. And thank God you delivered the bad news. And that, most people in the business world, they're going to hide that from you.
Yeah.
They're not going to call till they have an answer. So what happens if they don't answer? Or if they don't get an answer? They never call. In the meantime, you're floundering based on hope. They haven't called me. Maybe it's good news. Maybe the deal went through. Maybe I got the deal. Since so many people don't know how to deliver bad news, and I haven't had a chance to teach them, or they haven't accepted it. If I'm doing business with somebody and I got silence, I just all right, it didn't work out. They're scared to tell me. I can't blame them. They don't know how. But nobody hesitates with good news. And people hesitate with bad news. I learned it the hard way, but that happens to be the way to deal with everybody in real life under any circumstances.
Yeah. I suppose you don't really need to do that with good news. And it's funny as well, because if you would say to somebody, oh, this is going to be the best steak that you've ever tasted in your life, your expectations are like right up here. Yeah. And it's very rare that your expectations are actually going to be met.
Right.
So usually if I'm actually going into anything, whether it's like a vacation or an experience or whatever it might be, I don't want my expectations to be too high, because then I'm going to be disappointed if it doesn't meet my expectations.
Exactly.
I would kind of rather be like pleasantly surprised and it be better than what I thought it was going to be.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And, then what happens? People assume that navigating positive emotions should be the same as navigating negative emotions. When in point of fact, it's the opposite. Because if you were to break down that scenario in a very good way, you're helping people have a better experience, which means you're diminishing the upside. Because exceeding the upside is going to be great. So what a lot of people might call, if they were to compare that, they might say this isn't too bad.
Yeah. Were you ever in situations where, cause obviously the documentary shows like behind the scenes and how many people were working as a team on different cases. Was there ever scenarios you had where you were, I don't know, you or maybe somebody else had a different idea of what would be the best course of action?
Oh, almost all the time.
So how do you navigate that?
A little bit of it is negotiation behind the table on your side, prepping people in advance for what's going on. And you never know what's going to happen. That's the thing. And in business, I say never be so sure of what you want that you wouldn't take something better. And then people are like, there could be a different outcome that I had in mind that could be better. Oh, okay. So how do you prep them in advance for that? When I'm working kidnappings, I always got the question, how's this going to go? And I'm like, I don't know, maybe about 5 different ways. What are the 5? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
But, there's about 5 different possibilities here. Think of the best outcome, think of the worst outcome. More than likely, it's going to be somewhere in the middle. If we do our job as best we possibly can, best chance of success, leave some latitude to let something good fall out of the sky. Some good's going to fall out of the sky often enough that we don't know what it's going to be.
Mm-hmm.
So leave yourself open, be a little Zen-like, even though I'm not a Zen guy. But effectively, it's a Zen approach, which is against human nature, by the way. Human beings think in terms of duration, path, and outcome. Where am I going? How am I going to get there? How long is it going to take? It's very restricted thinking. And it's hard to let go of those things because that's how you're wired. Duration, path, and outcome. Where am I going to go? How am I going to get there? How long is it going to take? And to really maximize in life is to let all those go and just engage in a great process and let it be delightful is how you get there.
Sounds easier said than done.
Absolutely.
How the hell do you-
Freaking-lutely.
How do you get out of that state of mind?
Well, you only get out of that state of mind by experience. Now, how do you get out of that state of mind? How do you get yourself that experience? When we're teaching this stuff, we preach low-stakes practice all the time. You won't try a new skill when it's important. You'll try a new skill when it doesn't matter. So if we're coaching people in business, I'll say, all right, so pick out 2 people. Some that no matter what you say, you're not getting the deal. And some that no matter what you say, you're going to get the deal.
Okay.
Like, short of showing up in their office and puking on their table in front of them when their wife or their boss are there, you're going to get the business. Like, you can't hurt these people.
Yeah.
So try the skills there because you got nothing to lose. If you're never going to get the deal, then you ain't hurting yourself by talking to them and trying these skills.
Mm-hmm.
If it's rock solid, you're going to get the deal no matter what you do. Try the skills where you have no loss.
Okay.
Because fear of loss is the biggest driver of human behavior.
Mm.
So now go out and experiment. Low stakes or no stakes. And how is that in a daily life? Lyft driver. See if you get your Lyft driver to say something to you he hasn't told anybody else. Clerk in a grocery store. The counter person in an airport. The hotel guy. Now, the hotel guy's been pitched 9,000 times for an upgrade.
Mm.
And so, there's certain throwaways. Discounts. 10% discounts a throwaway. I'm a number of years ago, a girl I'm dating went to Macy's. She says, watch me get 10% discount on this. I'm like, 10%? You go in and be a jerk and be demanding, get 10%. You go in with empathy, which is a form of charm, by the way. Empathy and charm are very close. And I'll get 30%. But you go on it demanding, this is what I wanted. When you gonna have a sale? I know you're charging more during the week than you are on a weekend. I know you got a sale planned up. Valentine's Day, you're gonna put it on sale. Give me that discount now. Well, you're a jerk, and I got to give you 10%.
Yeah.
But another approach might get you 30. But you like 10% because you'll be getting 10%. And this happens in hotels all the time. People go in and complain. And they're going to give you the annoyance discount. Here, I'll give you 10% off. I'll give you a coupon for free breakfast, and you'll go away.
Yeah.
So don't mistake success by being the most demanding, the most difficult person. It's a throwaway discount. You can get a lot better by experimenting, and charm doesn't hurt. And
to have a bit of fun with it as well.
It's fun. It's playful. Yeah, and do way more than you can do by being a jerk.
With everything that you know now, do you feel as though you pretty much always get your way?
Well, there's two issues. The first issue is, can they give you what you want? Now, never be mean to somebody that could hurt you by doing nothing. There's always something they could do. Now, was it necessarily what you asked for? Now, if you're mean to them, what they could do for you, they ain't going to do because you annoyed them.
Yeah.
And hotels upgrade to a nice room, and hotels classic example. a hotel I checked into in New York about 2 weeks ago, they didn't have it. You know, it's an inventory issue. But there's other stuff that I might want. So if I was a jerk over the suite upgrade, you know, maybe they got their buddy runs a restaurant next door, and I can go get a discount next door. I actually had that happen in one hotel. Like I didn't, you know, I'm going for a hotel upgrade, and they don't have it, and I'm like, okay, you know, but they like the way I approach them, and the guy says, you know what? He says, you hungry? I'm like, yeah. He says, well, my buddy runs a restaurant next door. Here, let me write this out on the back of my business card. Make sure the manager gets it when you go next door. And I'm looking at this. I'm like, this looks like just a way to get me away from the front desk. This looks like just making me go away.
Yeah.
But it was unusual enough that I'm like, you know, what the hell? I go to the restaurant next door, get my food. Waitress finally comes, and I hand her this business card that has writing on it. And I go, you know, shows to the manager. Got it from the guy next door. She looks at me like, what are you kidding me? This is a handwriting on a business card from the guy in a hotel next door. Like, yeah, I know, but you know, show it to him anyway. She comes back, you get 20% off. I don't know how the hell it happened. So what am I driving at? I'm experimenting with this stuff all the time. And I'm willing to take something other than what I expected to get, because they might not be able to give me what I asked for, but they probably got something else if they just felt like it.
Yeah. From my experience, if ever I'm just playful or I just make a joke.
Yes.
Even if it's at my own expense.
Yes.
Something
even better.
Yeah. Something, I'm not even expecting anything, but often something good comes from it. And I don't understand why so many people are just complete dicks to members of staff if something's gone wrong or they want something. It's like if I was in their shoes and I was that member of staff, someone came up to me and was a dick, I'm like, I'm going to make things more difficult for you now.
Yes.
Because you're being a dick.
Yeah.
And it's not my fault. Like, I'm not the reason things haven't gone the way that you wanted them to go. I'm just a member of staff. See, but I'm going to make sure now that you're not going to get anything.
Yeah. But what I love about what you just said is you stumbled on two things that are superpowers, however you did, inadvertently. Playfulness and at your own expense.
Mm-hmm.
And when you combine those two, it's insane the good stuff that can fall out of the sky.
Yeah. I think that's why the success I've had in some relationships or dates is because I never take myself too seriously.
Good.
I always will make fun of myself. And I think that's good for them to see, because from the outside, you know, if they don't know me very well, they've just seen stuff which they've seen on social media, maybe my Instagram, which doesn't show the full version of me.
Right.
They have a very different idea of what I would be like. The other thing, I'd be full of myself. I take myself very seriously, but then I'll surprise them in person.
Yeah.
And well done. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And it tends to work in my favor.
Yeah. Amen. Yeah. And why not? And you leave them better off too, because they had fun.
Yeah. Okay. So last question before we wrap up. If you could go back and renegotiate one moment of your life, what would it be?
I don't know. Because let me see. Wow. You know, that's like, what's a genuine regret? And I think to genuinely have regrets, you got to be unhappy with where you are.
Yeah.
I mean, there's, you know, I know I've hurt people. I know I've made mistakes, and I wish I hadn't created the harm that I created. 'Cause I'm human.
Mm-hmm.
There ain't no way around that. But am I unhappy with where I'm at? I'm not unhappy with where I'm at. There's pain that I inflicted that I wish I hadn't inflicted. Like, I'm divorced. You know, whatever I did wrong, whether I picked the wrong person, how I handled myself, like there's no question I could have been a better man in my relationship. Absolutely no question. Would that have changed the outcome? And also, if I had married her in the first place, I wouldn't have the son that I have, who's in the documentary, who I'm enormously proud of.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I said this to my son not that long ago. I said, without question, I could have been a better man when I was married to your mother. Would that have changed anything? I don't know. Probably not, actually. So, yeah, what do I wish? I wish I would have been a better man, without question, I wish I would have been a better man.
Mhm.
And probably at every stage of that marriage. Would it have changed? Or, would I know how to treat the woman that I'm with now as a result of having screwed up with other women? I'm grateful for the lesson I learned because I'm in a phenomenal relationship now. So what would I have renegotiated? Interesting question.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Nice. We'll leave it at that. Where can everyone find you?
The website,
Mhm.
blackswanltd.com, BLACKSWANLTD.com. That's actually the best resource because there's a variety of things there. It tells you about a training, whatever training we have coming up. It tells you about if you can't make an in-person training, the online training is coming up. We're holding our first major summit in Louisville next month. And you might not be able to make it if you're here in the UAE. If you're someplace, it's a long stretch for right now.
Mhm.
But in the meantime, how can you get better? You could get better on something we have on the website that costs you nothing. That a year from now, you might be able to make a conference. So start with the website, blackswanltd.com. If you want to learn, don't bother with it. If you think that we're going to give you an injection, and you'll be good, we're going to sprinkle you with fairy dust. You got to be involved. You want to be involved to get better, come to the website.
Amazing. Thank you, Chris. Appreciate your time.
My pleasure.